Welcome to the You're Not Crazy podcast, hosted by Jessica Knight, a certified life coach who specializes in healing from narcissistic and emotional abuse. This podcast is intended to help you identify manipulative and abusive behavior, set boundaries with yourself and others, and heal the relationship with yourself so you can learn to love in a healthy way. You can connect with Jessica and find additional resources, content, and coaching at emotionalabusecoach.com.
Hello, and thank you for being here. Before we dive in, I want to go through the fine print and share how we can work together. Because healing from this kind of pain takes a lot more than time. It takes the right kind of support. I work with people entangling themselves from emotionally abusive relationships, coercive control, trauma bonds, high conflict co-parenting dynamics, high conflict divorce, and if you're at the beginning of the road and wondering what divorce would look like. I offer one-on-one coaching at every stage. If you're still in the relationship, if you're unsure if it's abuse, if you know it's abuse but you're having trouble understanding what that looks like, or what to do with it, I can help you name what's happening, start setting boundaries that work for you, and figure out what you need. If you're thinking about leaving, we'll explore what that might look like in a grounded and personalized way. If you're navigating divorce or custody or co-parenting with a high conflict person, I can help you document, strategize, and stay emotionally anchored, especially when you're being gaslit, discredited, and re-traumatized by the legal system. If you've already left and you're stuck in the trauma bond, or if you've been discarded and struggling to feel like yourself again, I can help you rebuild self-trust and reconnect with your own nervous system in a way that actually feels doable. Everything I do is highly personalized. I don't walk you through a one-size-fits-all program. I listen, I reflect, and I guide you based on what you're facing right now. And some people work with me through a one-time validation call, which is offered on my website, where we zero in on one issue you're struggling with and start to untangle it together. Others work with me on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, depending on what's going on in your specific situation. And this is especially helpful when healing from emotional abuse and also in divorce. If you're curious about starting, I offer a $25 intro call, which if you listen to my older episodes, I call it a clarity call. It used to be free, and I talk about it at a later episode, but really a lot of people were no-showing to those calls, and that was taking away time from clients that I do work one-on-one with. And so if we move forward, I just take that fee and apply it to your first session. That intro call is just for us to get on the same page so you can share what's going on for you and I can share how I might be able to help. I only take a limited number of those calls per month because one-on-one coaching is the core of my work. Out of all these offerings that I have, one-on-one coaching is the thing that I do the most, and I do it 6 days a week most of the time, 5 to 6 days a week. And so if my calendar looks full and if there's not a time that you can get in, you can email me at jessicaknightcoaching.com, and I always try and make space where I can. And I may also always have a few openings from one-on-one client reschedules. You can also explore self-paced courses and toolkits at jessicaknight.thinkific.com, including Divorcing a Narcissist 101 and the Emotional Abuse Breakthrough course. I have a documentation course and my new signature program, Unhooked, which is a private podcast and course that walks you through the full cycle of abuse, helps you map it in your relationship and how to break it and how to begin to see what it really is that you're going through. If you want ongoing support in a more flexible way, you could always check out my Substack at jessicaknight.substack.com. Each month I focus on a different theme, from trauma bonding to divorce to cluster B to sexual coercion to emotional abuse to toxic breakups. Those are just some from this year. Paid members get access to monthly deep dives, master classes, Q&As, strategy kits, and I'm working on some more group options. There is also a free option and a monthly option. So please head over to Substack. The link is in my show notes. You also can just search Jessica Knight Coaching and I'll come up. Everything that I create is meant to help. My coaching, my writing, my courses, this podcast, it's built around the one truth that you're not crazy. You are conditioned to doubt your reality, and I want to help you change that and understand what you're going through. If you like this podcast, the best thing that you can do is subscribe and rate the episode 5 stars. You can find me on my websites, emotionalabusecoach.com and high-conflict divorcecoaching.com. All of the offerings that I just mentioned are also in the show notes below. Now let's get to the episode. Thank you for being here. Before I dive in, this is not legal advice. This is for education purposes only. I'm a divorce coach. I am not an attorney. I'm trained in high conflict divorce. Everything that I'm sharing with you are just suggestions. And so always run things past your attorney if you want to take any of the strategies that I discuss in this episode or any other episodes. This episode is going to piggyback off of the one that I did around DARVO last week, because I know that this is a topic that probably feels very confusing. And a lot of times people will say document everything, which is something I will talk about at a later time. But I want to kind of unpack what that looks like in terms of DARVO. And so I did an episode that's linked in the show notes about DARVO and what that means in family court. And I want to kind of walk you through what it looks like to capture the patterns. And so if you're like, what is DARVO? Go listen to that episode, because I define it and I also talk about how it comes up. And so in this episode, I want to talk about how to begin to show what's going on. And so to capture the patterns, deny, attack, reverse, victim, offender in a format that's actually useful for lawyers and GALs and family court professionals. And I said the same thing in the last episode. I'm not going to go through what documentation is in terms of family court. It would be an hour long and I would never get to that, like the content. So I have a course. It's $29. It's on my website. It's linked in the show notes. My website's high-conflictdivorcecoaching.com. I invite you to go and look at that and to take what you need from it. And I think there's a lot of content in there about documentation, how to do it, what to do. And so if you are confused, if you are looking for a resource, and I encourage you to start there. When we are thinking about logging some of these patterns, and you don't have to document anything perfect at the beginning. This is really when this is getting sent to someone. So for me, I only go through and edit my documentation when I know that I have to send some of it or send patterns to my lawyer. And so, for example, this is an example structure of what you can put together. Date, the event that triggered it. So, for example, like an exchange, the denial. So they denied being late. The attack, which is being accused of something. And then when they did the role reversal of victim and offender, probably a blame on you. You want to add the impact on you. Your child becomes distressed. And then if there's any supporting evidence you have, and sometimes you might not have any, but the biggest thing that you need to do is to just make sure that you are tracking it. And if you do it in a digital way that can be timestamped, that protects you a bit more. And so just to go over that quickly again, because I think people get really confused, you want to do the trigger event, and then you want to go through DARVO. What was denied? How was the attack made? And then there's the role reversal. Then you think about what's the impact on the child, and if there's any supporting evidence. And that's how I would track things for myself. When I send this to a lawyer or a GAL or a parent coordinator or a parent coach, I would not be adding in the denial, attack, reverse, victim, offender. I would change those categories to what happened, and then attack and the role reversal would go together in like comments or behaviors of the other parent. If this person is making allegations at you and they are sending it through text message, email, parenting app, you really want to try and respond without escalating, making it court readable and as emotionally unreactive as you can. And if you have a coach, people have this tendency all the time, like asking me, can you rewrite this? Because I just can't see it otherwise. I'm going to share some canned responses you can use if you're noticing that this is coming your way. And so one could be, that's not accurate. Please refer to the communication dated on the date. Another could be, as per the parenting plan, I'll proceed with, and then you insert the factual action. Another might be, I will not engage further on this point. My focus is on the child's well-being. And then the next one, or last one I'll say would be, I'm committed to following court orders and keeping communication factual. I would avoid explaining your feelings. I'm hurt that, counter accusing, you're lying and manipulative or anything like that, and defending your character. Every single message should be written as if the judge is reading it right now. And if you're not in a mental place to do it, then wait, because I don't know anybody that can talk calmly when they're activated. I know for sure I can't. When you need to show, say, your lawyer how many issues are happening and how they keep blaming you, and that's where you're getting stuck, you would share, the date, the place that this happened, what actually happened, if there's any evidence or anything supporting documentation, and then basically just share the impact on your child. And you want to present it as a way to show this is the pattern of behavior that's happening. Here's everything I'm doing and I can't get out of the pattern, but this is what I'm being accused of. Because most lawyers may not know DARVO by name, but they know patterns of false counter accusations. And so if they have the information and if they're willing to listen, because if they're not willing to listen, that's a whole other problem, then you can begin to put things together. You can ask them how they would like information. I usually tell people if they're not getting direction, I would share the most recent, the craziest example, like the most egregious, and then the most consistent example that you see. DARVO is supposed to make you feel like you're crazy. And the more that you stay rooted in the data, you stay calm, you have evidence, you really do cut off the oxygen supply. It's not about winning here. It's about building the case. A lot of people then say, what if my lawyer doesn't say it? My answer then is, you have to translate DARVO into legal language. And it could be reframed something like this. I wrote this up before I started this episode. I've been tracking a pattern in which I'm accused of the exact behavior I'm trying to protect against. I have documentation showing that whenever I enforce boundaries or follow court orders, I'm then accused of being controlling or abusive. These events follow a consistent cycle that I've been logging. And I wanted to bring this to your attention because I think it's relevant to you defending my credibility. So what you're not saying is DARVO. You're saying repeated pattern of false accusations. You're saying projection and role reversal tactics. And you're saying manipulative use of court filings to confuse the narrative. You have to use the lawyer's language, not yours. DARVO isn't the point. The point is that they're trying to destroy your credibility. The abuser's entire game is to poison the court's perception of the victim. And that's the DARVO end game. So if you show the pattern and not the emotion, it can help. And I really feel like the more that I say not the emotion, I feel like not myself, because having lived this, it's impossible to separate sometimes. And it was such a need for boundaries. And I'm sure I'll do an episode on that in the future, but I just want you to know that if you are having a hard time separating the emotions, please don't shame yourself or blame yourself. It is normal. A lot of these communications with the person directly end up in our Family Wizard, Talking Parents app close emails. And so they're harder to manipulate, especially if it's there. And if you are working on your communication, then it's going to come in clearer or may come in clearer over time. And if your lawyer doesn't get it, if your lawyer minimizes the abuse, it is a red flag. And I would encourage you to say something like, I'm accused that my legal strategy is being shaped with a false equivalence and that it's going to appear that I'm just a conflict-driven person.
or as conflict driven as them, which is exactly what they want the court to see. But I'm not here to fight. I'm here, can you help me frame this case accordingly? And if they really push back on that, and if they really don't get it, that's probably time for you to have a heart to heart with yourself on, is this the right attorney for my specific case? Because no one should have to beg their own lawyer to recognize abuse. But if they do, you need to make sure that you have somebody that is able to beat DARVO in court, which needs discipline, it needs evidence, and it needs clarity. Legal professionals, a lot of times, they don't respond well to stories, but what they do respond to is the patterns of repeated behavior, violations of court orders or parenting plans, evidence that shows manipulation of the process. And so if you need to group evidence into patterns or strategy, that might be something that might help you too. There are a few patterns that you can show that I want to talk through before we wrap up this part. But I named a few of them, and that doesn't mean that there's not more. There's certainly more. But one of the patterns is every time you set a boundary, the other party will claim they're the victim. And that's where the accusations come in. The way you can frame that is, my attempt to follow the court order or to protect our child have been repeatedly met with false accusations. For example, when I enforced the 5 p.m. pickup, I was accused of being controlling. When I refused the unscheduled overnight, I was accused of gatekeeping. When I documented concern for our child's distress, I was accused of coaching the child and that I had no idea what I was talking about. Another pattern that comes up is retaliatory allegations. And so if every time you raise a concern, they respond with a mirror accusation. For example, if you raise an issue of yelling at a child, within the next day, you're accused of being emotionally abusive. If you bring up a substance abuse concern, you'll be accused of false reporting, and they'll bring it up for you. And the way that you can frame that is that, there's a pattern where when I raise a concern, it's mirrored back as an accusation against me. And I'm concerned that this is being used to discredit me and confuse the narrative. Another one that comes up a lot is basically the other person trying to change the parenting plan. And so that they will accuse you of violating the very terms that they're not following. Say they're late for an exchange, they'll claim you're late. They cancel a visit, they'll claim that you denied access. They request a schedule change, but then accuse you of inflexibility if you say no. But you can show that through documented patterns of what the actual parenting plan is and then what happened after. When you do try and create accountability, it also can lead to a lot of escalation. For example, if you have a phone call every day with your child and then they miss it or they don't attend, then they're going to blame you for that. And you could just make a list of the times that you tried to call and the times that they picked up and times they didn't. I also want to add one. This is one that I actually think lawyers completely miss most of the time, but it's the pattern of using legal and court systems as a weapon. And so what they do is they show false filings, unnecessary hearings. They have manipulative use of GALs, child services, police reports. This is not to protect the child, but to punish or to destabilize you. And then the way you would frame it is there's a very clear pattern of my co-parent using the legal process as a form of retaliation or control. And this includes filing complaints or reports shortly after personal grievances or legal losses. And so you basically show all the times that happened and what it's connected to and how they constantly say that they're not going to do it, but then they do it. I hope that this was helpful, and I hope it was helpful in seeing why DARVO is effective and why it can be helpful to get ahead of it, because I really don't want anybody to feel like they have no way out. Because really what's happening, and really at the end of the day, it's you did the right thing. They got angry. They're attacking your character. Then they claim victimhood. And then they find a way to use the system to escalate it. That is DARVO, and it is manipulation, and it is abuse, and it's post-separation abuse. And if a legal professional won't see it, then you need to show them the pattern. And if they don't believe it or see it after you show the pattern, then I would consider my representation, and if they are the right person, to represent me. If you are in a high conflict divorce, I am happy to help. You can reach out to me at jessica@jessicaknightcoaching.com, at high-conflictdivorcecoaching.com, and you can view my offerings and my courses on my website, high-conflictdivorcecoaching.com and emotionalabusecoach.com. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here. And I really do hope that this was helpful.